to discuss it all. Republican strategist Josh Holmes joins us from Washington, and Vox senior political correspondent Liz Plank here with me as well. Liz, just a moment. Josh, I want to ask you again, we heard right there one of the more prominent voices in this piece walking back the comments, or at least looking to provide further context perhaps to the quotes that were used in the article. It was an article that Donald Trump himself, again, has called a lame hit piece. Interestingly, though, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus said this weekend in discussing it that he actually thought that voters, regardless of how they felt about it or whether or not they believed what they were reading, that they wouldn't care one way or another. What do you make of it all?
Well, look, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that Donald Trump's standing amongst women in the general electorate has been one of the larger liabilities that he takes going into this general election. I mean, his favorable, unfavorable numbers are nothing short of historic amongst women. We've seen disapproval, unfavorables up to 70%. All that being said, the problem with this New York Times piece is, as you indicated, the central star and the leading voice in it disputes the characterization. She has a problem with it, which unbelievably actually reinforces Donald Trump's entire message, which is the media establishment, the political establishment, and the establishment writ large is there to attack him at every turn and try to undermine his candidacy. So, you know, look, I think he's made an incredibly successful candidacy thus far at undermining his critics by suggesting they have no credibility, and this certainly helps that.
And yet, you know, the two writers of the piece joined Liz, CBS this morning, earlier today, and they spoke to the fact that while their work was, they sought to offer greater and broader context to Donald Trump's historic relationships with and treatment of women in his companies and professionally, that they believe that in the end, they actually said, look, this is why we have elections in the end. His supporters will probably hear what they want to hear. His critics will probably hear what they want to hear, and maybe ne'er the twain shall meet. What do you make of it, especially given, again, the fact that 70% of the electorate right now says that they don't care, or female voters don't care for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, 7 out of 10 women having an unfavorable view of Donald Trump is certainly significant. I think at this point, women probably have a more favorable view of like yeast infections than they do of Donald Trump. But you know, and when I saw the article, I was excited to see what was in there. And unfortunately, you know, the journalist who wrote it up did an amazing piece, but it didn't really tell us anything new. I mean, Donald Trump, we know, is a chauvinistic person. He's a macho man, and he has very misogynistic, sexist beliefs that underlie his world vision. That's why he retweeted a photo of his wife next to Ted Cruz's wife and said, you know, basically talking about their appearance and how their appearance is their only value. And so I'm not. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to sway women or men in a different direction. And to your point, Donald Trump supporters are very fervent supporters. There's not much that will change their mind at this point.
Some of the initial support for Donald Trump following this report, Josh, was the assertion that if there was behavior that was less than admirable in the past, it was just that, in the past. It didn't speak to Donald Trump, certainly the presumptive GOP nominee. How important, then, is this narrative spine, is this through line of treatment of and behavior with women as it concerns Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, whether he likes it or not, women make up 51% of the electorate in general elections during presidential elections. And so it's an extremely important aspect to focus on. All that being said, we've seen Donald Trump shatter every single political norm, every single political rule, every single sort of campaign existence that we've had up to this point, in that the past doesn't seem to matter to anyone. Now, that important caveat to that is that we've been dealing with basically 5 or 6% of the electorate in a Republican primary. We're expanding now out much beyond that to folks who probably aren't sold on Donald Trump, and he needs to do an awful lot to try to convince people that he actually is a voice representing women and not just sort of a conservative anti-PC notion. So we'll see how he does, but obviously these things don't help. So we'll see.